So I think we're going to go ahead and get started with today's session. My name's Derek Lalone, excuse me, and below me is Chris Schaefer of the Model Schools team. And before we get started with today's presentation on maximizing Chromebooks, we're just going to kind of review our schedule for this week of the webinars that we have coming up. So just to give you a quick overview, tomorrow we're going to have Google Classroom from the student's point of view. So really, we're going to have one of our Model Schools folks talk about what it looks like as from the student perspective of Google Classroom, especially for those of you new to the experience, what the student sees in some of the different pieces that your students may ask you about as you guys continue to roll out Google Classroom. On Wednesday, even though I forgot to change the day, whoops, sorry, itchy trigger finger here. I got the dates right. The days are wrong. Anyway, so April 23rd, we have the Google Classroom mobile app. So we're actually going to go through if you have students that are using the Google Classroom mobile version, or if you want to use the Google Classroom mobile version, we're doing a training on that. April 24th, we have Google Sheets and the basic ideas and implementation for across the curriculum. So that's just really kind of diving into Google's version of Excel as we kind of continue our journey here. So that's the lineup that we have for this week. And with that, I'm just going to shut off screen A here and turn on my other screen quickly. And we can get started with today's session.
I just wanted to remind everybody too, don't forget to go out to My Learning Plan and register. For this session, the people that said that they didn't register, that's totally fine. We'll just make sure we mark you as attended. And then once you do register, that will show up as that you did attend. But going forward, just please go out and register on My Learning Plan, and that will also have the most up-to-date schedule. So I know we have sessions scheduled for this entire week, and those are all out on the calendar. So feel free to check it out.
All right, thanks, Chris. And today's presentation, we're really talking about maximizing the Chromebook experience. So really, we're going to talk about not only some, a few questions that have come up from districts, but additionally, some of the accessibility options that are built into the Chromebooks. So for the districts that are out there that have sent the Chromebooks home for their students, just some of the different pieces that the Chromebook can tap into to kind of show you the accessibility that is built within the Chromebooks. So I am going to stay in kind of guided view here instead of going into full presentation view, just so I can kind of show you what I'm doing as I go along. But the first section that we want to touch on is the accessibility within the Chromebook. So we want to talk about some of the key features that are built into every Chromebook device that allows for student accessibility. So the first one we have is, first of all, enabling the features. So from my Chromebook view, if I do an Alt-Shift-S, and it's going to pop up right over here on my left-hand side here, you can see here's my accessibility option right here. And I can come in, and I can click on that button, and you can see these are all the different options that we have built into the Chromebook. So you can see we have an on-screen keyboard. If you have students that either need to manipulate the mouse or if they have a touch screen, high contrast mode, I know that's used for students with dyslexia. Chromevox for spoken feedback. Select to speak, so that's text to speech. You can see I have it turned on right now. We have a full screen magnifier, docked magnifier. So there's a lot of different tools that are built in. We're just going to kind of give an overview of a few of them to show you how they work. So to enable, once again, that's Alt-Shift-S to open up the accessibility menu and get into the menus themselves. And as we work through, the first one that I like is the handwriting recognition piece. So that's actually available through the on-screen keyboard. So if I open up my accessibility options again, go into accessibility, and if I turn on my on-screen keyboard, so now when I minimize, and I don't know if you can see my screen, but down in my dock, right next to where it says sign out, there's a little keyboard option. If I select that, you can see I can pull up a virtual keyboard on my Chromebook. Now, the nice thing about this is if I click on the little squiggle line here, and because I have a touchscreen Chromebook, well, I was supposed to write hello, but I messed it up. Oops. But now I can actually write in And once I write in the word hello, you can see it kind of highlights up at the top of the screen. And depending on how close my words are, but if I hit the hello button, that'll actually enter it into the screen. Well, it should have anyway. And then I would be able to use those features. So that's kind of a nice feature built in, is the handwriting recognition. So a student can either have a virtual keyboard. So if they have fine motor skill issues, or if they just prefer to handwrite, you have that option available for them. Next up, we have text to speech. So same area. So if I pull that up again, and all we have to do to toggle these on is just click on them. And so now you can see I have a checkbox up here. And now I can come in and I can select highlighted areas of text. And you might not be able to hear it just because of the way that we're streaming right now, but it will turn on the text-to-speech feature in your accessibility options. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to my accessibility options and turn off my on-screen keyboard, because that is one of those things where if you don't need it on, you might not have to have it on. But I did want to kind of show that piece off to you. Oops. Kind of moving down the list here of another content piece is the Chromevox Reader. So this is one of those things where if I toggle on Control-Alt-Z, it will basically turn on text-to-speech through what's called the Chromevox Reader. And that's really where I can go in and I can highlight entire sections of text and enable it for read back for students. So like I said, I won't show you that one just because I've been having sound issues on my Chromebook, but I did want to show you that this is available. And all you have to do is hit Control-Alt-Z to toggle that on and off to be able to use it. So that's kind of the quick accessibility features that I want to go over. There are more built in, but those are kind of the primary ones that we've been seeing districts ask for, is the text-to-speech feature, and then the virtual keyboard and the handwriting feature as well. So that's that piece. The next section that we have dedicated to is creating content. So we've had some questions come in from districts about, streamlining how we can actually, streamline the creation of content and make things a little bit easier. So a few things right out of the gate is if I want to increase or decrease the size of the content in my browser or the fonts, all I have to do is hit the control button and the plus sign, or the control button and the minus sign, or the equals and dash sign, or maybe it's underscore, and it'll increase and decrease the content. To reset, I can hit Control parentheses or Control-O, or Control-0, I'm sorry. And then you can see you can do Control-Shift and plus to increase the entire screen, including the browser itself. So to kind of show you what I mean, you can see as I'm hitting it, I have a little menu that pops up here, and it resizes my browser as I type. I'm just going to go ahead and hit reset to bring it back to normal. There we go. So that's just one of those nice little things, because that's one of those things too that accidentally happens a lot, where all of a sudden all the text on my screen is bigger, all my images are bigger, everything's all messed up. I can't figure out how to do it. But that's kind of the easiest way, is the Control plus and Control minus. On top of that, we have the dictation speech. So what we can do is if I hold down the search function and the letter D, or if I tap the mic icon that pops up on the screen, that will enable us to dictate into the Chromebook itself. So I can do my Google searches, I can do things like that, all using the microphone. So to give you an example of that, I'm just going to go out to Google here. And I'm just going to click on the microphone. I'm going to try to click on the microphone. There we go. And it's going to ask me to allow my microphone. So now everything that I speak into the microphone, it'll automatically do a search, and it'll automatically pull up the Google piece. Now I can also do that by hitting the search button on my keyboard along with the letter D, and that will also mimic the same thing. I'll jump back to my presentation here. Let's see what else we got. So we work down the list. Another nice piece is presenting Google Slides with closed captions. So if you are narrating, or if you are doing something through Google Meet or anything along those lines, you can see that depending on what you're presenting on, but as long as you're in Chrome, you can do Control-Shift-C, or on a Mac, Command-Shift-C, and that will enable closed captioning within your Google Slides. So as you're narrating certain pieces, it will actually highlight within the Google Slides itself. But if you're presenting it, like I said, that could be done in either Google Meet, or it could be done, directly in the slide presentation, just depending on what your preference is. So screen magnification, you can see that we can turn on screen magnifiers. Now, like I said, that's more of an accessibility feature. But if you're one of those folks that need things magnified, or the font size on the computer screen just isn't big enough, and I don't want to necessarily kind of skew all of my content to make everything bigger, I can turn on the full screen magnifier, which is built into the accessibility options. And you can see I can hit Control-Search-D, or I can adjust it with the Control and Alt tabs and scrolling with 2 fingers on my trackpad. Like I said, I'm going through these quick just because there's a lot of tips and we have a very short amount of time. But the other really nice thing that's available to us is within Google Docs, and I don't know how many folks are familiar with this, but I'm just going to go out to Docs quick and create a brand new document. And when I do that, I'm just going to create a blank one here, I hope. But what's built into Google Docs is a voice-to-text feature that's built right into the tools menu. And, a lot of folks just aren't aware that it's something that exists. So once again, if you do have students that struggle to write, or if you're working with, a younger group where they don't necessarily have the typing experience built in, you can leverage the voice-to-text feature. So if I come into where is it? Here we go. Under the tools menu, if I scroll down to voice typing, that's going to pop up a little microphone on my screen, and all I have to do is click on it. It's going to ask me to allow access. So now, as I'm speaking, my document should be able to pick up everything that I am saying, period. And I do have to add the punctuation as I'm speaking through my document. But as you can see, Google Chrome is fairly accurate with everything it is picking up, as long as you speak a little slowly and clearly, period. So I'm just going to turn that off now. But you can see that it does a pretty good job of picking up everything that I said. And it's just one of those really nice features that's built into the Google Chrome, especially for Word docs. It's a great little feature, especially for our struggling typers and our struggling writers that are out there. Okay, so jump back to the presentation. Oops. Another big thing, and I know probably most of you know it, but if you are on a Chromebook, taking a screenshot, that's a big piece, and that's also going to kind of leverage what we talk about next. But this is a really nice feature just because I can hit the control button on my keyboard, and there's a little kind of snapshot of the window up here. It looks like a square with 2 lines to the right of it. If I do a full screenshot, I just hit control and that switch window button. To do a partial screenshot, if I hold down Control Shift and switch window, it will take that screenshot. Now, just so you know, for the most part, depending on how your Chromebooks are built, there is some internal memory built on the Chromebooks. So when you take that screenshot, it's actually going to install it inside the Chromebook itself. So I still have to go into our images in the internal memory to pull it up to Google Drive. So that's just something to kind of be aware of if you take a screenshot of it. And if your Chromebook's built to have memory on it, it'll kind of default there rather than automatically upload to Google Chrome. So that's just kind of something to keep an eye on as you're working through different pieces. But I always like to show kind of the taking a screenshot piece for the folks that haven't had a lot of experience with Chromebooks. So next up, we have the Shared Classroom Chrome extension. So what this does, it's a Google extension that we can pull from the Google Web Store. And as we always say, you know, depending on your district, it will depend on whether or not you have access to install your own extensions. But what's nice about it is it's a little extension that's right up here. If I hit Add Extension, it's going to load up all of my classrooms. So I can go in and I can select which one. Whoops. I can say I want to add it to my digital citizenship course. And you can see, here's my presentation. I can say students can view the file. I can set it up however I want. I can hit push to students. And then it'll actually give me a log of who it was pushed to and who it wasn't. But once I'm ready to go, whoops. Sorry, I have a finicky mouse here. There we go. So now if I push that out, that presentation is now going to be pushed out to my Google Classroom automatically directly into the stream. So it's not something we can build an assignment off of, but if you're browsing and looking for content on the internet, you see a really cool article that ties into your curriculum. With that extension put in, I just hit that button, push it to the classroom, and off it goes. So that's kind of a really neat little extension to kind of help out with you know, working with Google Classroom. So this final piece goes back to our screenshot tool, but it also goes back to worksheets. So one of the biggest questions that we get from teachers is, I have all these worksheets. I want to be able to have my students kind of set them up to be able to push them out to them. And they don't have the ability to within Google Chrome. You know, it's either a PDF or an image and they have to take it or try to put it in Google Drawing or something like that. What's nice is we can take an image, so we can take our screenshots of our worksheets. So if we have them uploaded, we can import them into Jamboard. And I suggest everybody take a look at our Jamboard video from Allison Blackwell to kind of get more of kind of a rundown of that. But what I can do is I can take my screenshot, I can plug it into my Jamboard. And once it's in my Jamboard, you can see I have all these annotation tools over here. So students can come in and they can write little sticky notes to fill in the blanks, or they can kind of try their best to handwrite. But if they're using it from their phone or the Jamboard from a phone or a tablet, they'll be able to use their finger to write in answers. The other great thing about Jamboard is that it works just like Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Slides within Google Classroom, which means I can create this worksheet template and make a copy for all of my students. So I can send this out essentially as a worksheet for them. They can open up Jamboard and then they'll be able to annotate their answers directly on the sheet. And just like an assignment, you will get all of access to all of the content. So that's, you know, again, one of those kind of neat features that are built in, and it's kind of one of the workarounds that we've kind of come up with in this kind of remote learning environment. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Schaefer.
All right, so thank you, Derek. One of my favorite things about Jamboard specifically is that it doesn't require your students to go and sign up for any special account. It's just part of their Google account within G Suite. So it's a great tool if you want to do that kind of interactive kind of worksheet or activity builder. It's kind of like a virtual whiteboard. And so that's a great piece that you could easily include for your students. So the next section I wanted to talk about was offline mode. And this is a question that I've seen pop up quite a bit in the last week or so as teachers and students are transitioning more to actually covering new content for students. Some of our students don't have that at-home internet access. And so I wanted to share some tips for the Chromebook specifically, where if your students are at home, they can still access a lot of the things they're doing for you via Google Classroom or what other method they might be having within their activities. So first thing, Google Drive has an offline mode. And so when you're on your Google Drive homepage, so if you just go to drive.google.com, in the top right-hand corner, you see this gear cog, and that opens up a menu where you can go into settings. Within settings, there's this offline area. And if you check the box, what it does is on the device that you're working on, no matter what device it is, Chromebook, Mac, PC, it takes a local copy of your most recently edited documents and it puts them onto the device itself. So that's automatic backup of your recent documents. So if I was working on a presentation in Google Doc and you know, a spreadsheet today, those would automatically download to my computer. Now for this to get started, you have to be online. So this is where a lot of schools have gone and set up kind of hotspot areas for students to pull up in their car next to like a school bus that has Wi-Fi, connect and download activities. If this were turned on and students logged in, it would then download their most recent documents and put them onto their Chromebook. In addition to that, you can get the Google Docs offline extension. This is in the Chrome Web Store. It's offered by Google. And what it does is it gives you the full editing tools that you would have in an online doc, short of the collaborative piece, when you go offline. So what it does is it just takes, again, the most recent files that a student was working on within Drive, basically, and it pulls them down to the Chromebook. You do have the ability to go and select specific files manually. So if it's not something you worked on today or yesterday, and you know, say a student knows that they're going to need that document when they go home and they have no internet access, they can go and select them individually. So now that I'm going to go back a slide. Now in Drive, I've enabled my offline mode, and I have my offline extension for Google Docs is what they call it, but it's really all of the kind of core Google tools. What I can do is within Drive, I can select a file in my Drive, and I can either go up to the top toolbar. There's this 3-dot menu, and I'll show you this kind of live within my Google Drive in a second. I can select this, and now that I've turned offline on in my Drive, I have a new option in my menu for available offline. So I'll just toggle the switch. Or I can select any file in my Drive and just right-click on it, and I get that same menu where I can select the available offline. So now your students can select whatever files they're going to need to work on for the rest of today, tomorrow, this week, you know, until they're able to get online again. And it will download that copy to their Chromebook specifically. One thing I will point out about offline access for Chromebooks is there are some settings for your Google admin for your district to kind of tweak with your devices so that while they're home right now for remote learning, your students, basically Chromebooks generally by schools are set up so that when a student signs out within school, it automatically erases the data from that browsing session to save space on the Chromebooks, because a lot of them are shared across multiple students throughout the day. And if your district hasn't changed that setting to keep the data on the device when a student signs out, they'll need to tweak that now to allow this offline piece to work. Otherwise, the student will go to the school, they'll download all their offline stuff, but if they sign out, it will automatically erase all of the stuff that they just downloaded. So if your district has any questions about tweaking those settings, feel free to have them reach out to Derek or I, and we can help them kind of go through the settings of the Google Admin Console to fix those. If your district does use Gmail, there is actually a Gmail offline mode as well. One thing to note, this does not work in an incognito window, but it does work on a Chromebook. So same thing, your students would get on a Wi-Fi hotspot, they would be able to download all their mail messages, and then using the offline features within settings of Gmail, they can then access and read their mail after the fact. So before I move on to Google Keep, I do just want to show you quickly in my Drive, kind of on a live view, what this looks like. So now that I'm at my Drive homepage, I can go to the gear cog at the top and I can go to my settings. Within settings, I can check offline mode to turn that on. And so now you'll notice in my top toolbar, I have this new button here. This is ready for offline. So basically what it's doing is it's starting to sync my recent files into my offline access, basically. But any specific file that I wanted, for example, this presentation, I can right click on it and I can make it available offline. Or I can, I can click on it and go up to the top here to this toolbar and click on the More menu, and there is available offline as well. So it's two ways for a student to enable offline access for that specific document. I just wanted to make sure to show that live before I moved on. Google Keep is a great tool for your students to use on their Chromebooks for a number of things. I love it for note-taking. I also think it's a great way to get students to digitally mimic the writing process on their Chromebook that you would have them participate in the classroom. So Google Keep, for me, is the first step to the writing process where students are jotting down thoughts and notes. They're doing some research, collecting resources, building a little bit of a rough citation list for anything that they're citing. And Google Keep will then do a couple of things. It's available within Docs. So if you're actually doing a writing assignment, students can open up Docs and they can pull that Keep right into a doc. And it's available offline on the Chromebook. So that students can just go down to the bottom corner, click on the menu, and open up Google Keep and work offline on their Chromebook so they can take those notes, do that research without having to be online. The last thing I want to point out is that your Chromebooks are able to, out of the box, do some very simple photo editing. So when I talk about photo editing, what I'm talking about is very simple things like resizing a picture, cropping out part of a picture, rotating something, or maybe fixing the colors a little bit. It's not a full, Photoshop type editor, but most students don't need that. So if your Chromebooks are set up correctly, like I said, by your administrator to allow home access, students are going to be downloading files directly to the Chromebook. And when you're in your Files tab or your Files app on your Chromebook, it shows you all the files you have on your computer, your Chromebook. And in the top right corner, if you click on the More menu, you do get a list of how much space you have available as well. So if students are worried that they're going to run out of space to take all their assignments home, they can check that at any time to make sure that specifically they have enough space on their device. But to edit any of the photos within your Files tab, all you have to do is double click on it within your Files app, and it will open the basic editor. And from there, you can make those simple changes and save it to the location that it was in. So it is 12:30, and I'm going to go ahead and turn off my screen share. But if you guys have any questions, comments, anything you want us to review again, feel free to post those into the chat on the side of the video. We will hang out here for a few minutes. Before we let you go, I did want to share out quickly. I did find the full list of all of the workshops for this week. So let me just pull that up real quick. So for tomorrow at noon, we have Google Drive, the backbone of your Google account, where we'll review kind of the features of Drive and some of the tricks that may help you maximize your use of that specific tool. And the days are at the top here. On Wednesday, we have Google Classroom from the student's point of view. So this is where we'll be talking about, okay, when a student signs in, what does Classroom look like? What can they do? What are some of the things you may want to change in settings to allow them or not allow them to do certain things? On Thursday, we'll have the Google Classroom mobile app, where someone's going to be specifically talking about if students are using a phone or a tablet and they're using the Google Classroom app on there, what features does that allow them to have access to, and how might that be able to be kind of configured to be most effective for them? And then finally on Friday, we're going to talk a little bit about Google Sheets, which is a tool that not many teachers have kind of started using, but I think it's really powerful and could be used for a lot of really great things, especially with remote learning right now. So I just wanted to share that out. So yes, so Kim, I do see that you asked about when will the slides be sent out. As soon as we wrap up here, I'll make sure to put the link into an email and we'll get that out to you guys right away. I know we went through a lot of this really quickly, but we wanted to share as much as we possibly could in the half-hour time frame, and that way we could cover as much as possible. And we'll watch for questions for a few minutes. If you don't have any questions, thanks for joining us today. We hope we see you again tomorrow. But otherwise, we'll hang out a few minutes and then we'll end the stream and send that email out for you guys.